Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Natasha, and today I'm going to talk to you about reading more books. I am notorious for reading about 300 books a year, and a lot of people ask me how I do that, and then a lot of other people want to know why. So I will start with the why, and I have two main reasons. First, reading is a huge stress relief for me. The University of Minnesota found that reading can actually reduce your stress and anxiety by 68%, and that's after only reading for a few minutes. You don't need an hour to get lost in a book to feel those positive effects. You just need a few minutes. The second main reason can be summed up in the words of former Secretary of Defense and retired Marine Corps General Jim Mattis when he said, "If you haven't read hundreds of books, you are functionally illiterate and you will be incompetent because your personal experiences alone aren't broad enough to sustain you." Reading gives us more perspective, more empathy, and more awareness of the world, both close to us and far away. You don't have to read fiction novels or travel novels to experience this. You will expand your mind by just reading what you enjoy. Nothing is off limits. Those are the two main reasons why reading is a natural part of my daily life, and I do have other reasons as well, such as I just really like it. I love the idea of putting something out in the world because I think that's really courageous, and it's something that I shared with my mom, who is the person who instilled in me a great love of reading. Now, how do you actually consume more books? I have several suggestions, each of which either currently works for me or has been beneficial in my reading life. First, when you're reading something and you're just trudging through it or you've lost interest in it, stop reading it. Forcing yourself to read something that is uninteresting or that you don't have the energy to read will make you feel like you're back in school reading these long, boring novels that would bore you to tears. You can always stop reading something, or as we call it in the book world, DNF, which means did not finish. You can either return to it later, or you can return to it never. Right? Just read what you like. Next, some people think they need to get into a zone when they're reading, and it can take some time to get into that zone. So to overcome this, try reading in short bursts of around 5 minutes at a time, and you'll be able to start to adjust to those smaller bouts of reading. One of the ways that I'm able to read a lot of books is that I always have a book on me. So if I'm waiting in a line or I get to an appointment early, I can pull out that book and read for a few minutes. Audiobooks are books too. You can listen to audiobooks when you're in the car, when you're cleaning, or when you're at work, if appropriate. I usually listen to books on 1.5 times or 2 times speed, depending on the narrator. In fact, when I listen to books now at a regular speed, I think, why are they talking so slow? Only listen to books on a faster speed, though, if you can still enjoy the book. Read a variety of genres. In fiction, I love to read thrillers and mysteries and horror novels, but I will also try something different every so often. More than 90% of the books that I read are nonfiction books, and they run the gamut, whether it's leadership topics, psychology, marine animals, business, history, feminism, finances, and more. Also, have multiple books in circulation at once. I'm usually reading between 4 and 9 books at a time. Whatever book and topic that I have the energy around reading is the one that I'll pick up when I have a few moments to read. So it's okay to have a bunch of books in rotation at once. Find multiple mediums for books. You have the library, you can purchase books, there are ebook readers, and there are subscription services. We can purchase books pretty immediately online or by visiting our local indie bookstore, and having that new book in your hands can be very exciting. You can get a similar feeling by browsing the library. And if you can't find what you want at the library, you can use their system or you can just ask your librarian. One of the librarians at my local library reads the same types of books that I do, and she has been an amazing resource for recommending books that I had not read or heard of yet. Ebook readers such as Kindle or subscription services like Scribd are great ways to get new books, especially if you also enjoy browsing recommendations. You can establish a TBR, which is a to-be-read list. We do not always have time to read all the books that we want to, especially when they're coming at us pretty quick. So what we can do is make a list called a TBR. You can add or remove books whenever you want. And I have a friend who has over 1,000 books on her TBR. And she said that if and when she gets to them, she'll get to them. But she does not let it stress her out about that the number is so high. The purpose of the TBR is to be a catalog of books that you've heard about that you think you'd be interested in, and then you put them on that TBR until you have a chance to get to them. Remember that your reading life is supposed to be a way to relieve stress, not add more to your life. Use an easy app to track your books. Sometimes you read a book by an author that you liked, but later you can't recall the title or the author, and somebody says, "Oh, have you ever read this?" And then you can go and you can look it up real quick. You can see what rating you gave it, and you can give them feedback. Goodreads is a really great free app that allows you to track your reading. You can select the books you're reading, rate them when you're finished, label them by creating shelves, and you can create a TBR there. When you're reading, it is not about reading the most books, because if it was, you could technically count every children's book that you read, and you'd be able to say you read thousands of books a year. You read a book to enjoy it usually, or to gain something from it. So there are ways to retain what you read, even if you read a lot. But I will say that one of the first ways to retain more books is to actually read less books, which is exactly what some people need to do. Again, it's not a sprint just to read a ton of books. Here are some things that I do to retain more when I read. So first, I will read things that I can use right now. We can always read for the future, but I tend to pick up nonfiction books that I know I can use right now. This allows me to retain more from the book because I'm able to actively use it within a few days of reading it. Next, take notes. You can either take notes in the margins, obviously not if it's a library book, and in the notes section of a tablet or in a separate document or notebook, and you don't need to take intense notes. It reminds me of like when I was in maybe 3rd grade and you would take these really intense outlines of your coursework. It does not need to be anything like that. Notes are just meant to be reminders. When I'm reading, I put a page flag by something that I want to remember or revisit. And when I finish reading the book, I go back to those page flags and I make notes in a separate notebook. And when I take those notes, I make additional notes, that's a lot of notes, about how and where I could use it and who could benefit from it. I have a few of these notebooks full of notes, and I also love to revisit them and reflect on how I used something or how I could continue to use it in the future. If notes are not your thing, that's fine. You could also write a quick summary. When I read fiction, I tend to just write a quick summary full of spoilers, but the act of writing it down allows me to retain it more. You can also retain more of a book by reading it multiple times. There are a few books that are on my permanent bookshelf because I love reading them, and every time I read them, I get something different or new from them. Reading is an easy, potentially inexpensive hobby that can both relieve stress and give you wider perspective on a lot of things. Read what you like, don't make it a contest, and find ways to use the information that you are taking in. Thank you for listening to the Equipping Leaders podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha or on Twitter at Natasha Cheyenne. Please join me next time for more insight and resources to equip leaders.